The train whistle echoed across the empty plains as the sun sank behind the endless fields of gold. Dust rolled across the wooden platform of the small frontier town, and a young woman stepped down from the train clutching a small worn suitcase. Her name was Clara Whitmore, and everything she owned in the world was inside that case. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked around the quiet town that was supposed to become her new home. She had answered an advertisement months ago. A rancher seeking a wife. Honest life. Safe home. New beginning. Back then it sounded like hope. Now, standing alone in a town where nobody knew her, it felt like a mistake. Clara smoothed the wrinkles from her simple dress and looked around for the man who had written those letters. Daniel Carter. A widowed cowboy with a small son and a struggling ranch. His letters had been polite, respectful, even kind. But letters were only words. Reality could be very different. A wagon rolled toward the station, pulled by a tall chestnut horse. The driver climbed down slowly. He was taller than Clara expected, broad-shouldered, wearing a dusty hat and a worn leather coat that had seen many winters. Daniel Carter. His eyes were calm but guarded, like someone who had learned the hard way not to trust too easily. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel tipped his hat slightly. Miss Whitmore. Clara nodded. Yes, Mr. Carter. Another small pause stretched between them, filled with uncertainty. Clara had imagined this moment 100 times during the long train ride. None of those versions included the heavy silence that now sat between them. Daniel cleared his throat. The ride to the ranch takes about an hour. I figured you'd be tired from traveling. Clara hesitated before answering. I understand if you've changed your mind. Daniel frowned slightly. What do you mean? She held her suitcase tighter. If you saw me and decided I wasn't what you expected, you can send me back. I wouldn't blame you. Daniel looked surprised, then thoughtful. Before he could answer, a small boy suddenly jumped down from the back of the wagon where Clara hadn't even noticed him sitting. The boy ran straight toward her with the fearless energy only children have. Are you the new mama? Clara blinked in shock. Excuse me. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. This is my son, Ethan. The boy looked about 6 years old, with messy brown hair and curious eyes that studied Clara as if she were the most interesting person in the world. You look nicer than the last lady, Ethan said honestly. Daniel nearly choked. Ethan, but the boy ignored him and kept staring at Clara. Are you staying with us? Clara didn't know what to say. She glanced at Daniel uncertainly. I told your father he could send me back if you wanted. Ethan gasped like she had said something terrible. No. He turned to Daniel immediately. You can't send her back. Daniel sighed. Son. But Ethan grabbed Clara's hand. I already picked her. Daniel looked at the sky like he was asking the universe for patience. Clara tried not to laugh, but the boy's determination was impossible to ignore. Daniel finally spoke again, his voice quieter now. Looks like my son already made the decision. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest for the first time since arriving. Maybe this place wouldn't be so lonely after all. Before the story continues, if you enjoy heartfelt frontier stories like this one, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who loves Western tales, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable stories. Daniel loaded Clara's suitcase into the wagon, and they began the long ride toward the Carter Ranch. The road stretched across rolling grasslands, dotted with distant cattle and old wooden fences. The sky turned orange and purple as the sun sank lower. Ethan sat beside Clara, asking questions every few minutes. Do you know how to bake pie? A little. Good. Dad burns everything. Daniel muttered from the front seat. That happened one time. 3 times, Ethan corrected. Clara laughed softly. For the first time in months, she felt safe enough to laugh. When they finally reached the ranch, Clara saw a small but sturdy house beside a red barn. It wasn't grand, but it was clean, and smoke rose from the chimney. Daniel climbed down. I asked my neighbor Mrs. Thompson to start a fire before we got back. Clara stepped inside the house slowly. The room smelled of wood smoke and fresh bread. A lantern glowed softly on the table. It felt warm. Ethan proudly gave her a tour of everything like he owned the place. This is the kitchen. That's my room. Dad snores really loud. Daniel groaned. Clara covered her mouth, trying not to laugh again. That night, they ate a simple dinner together. Clara noticed how carefully Daniel watched Ethan, making sure the boy ate enough, making sure he didn't spill his milk. There was quiet kindness in the way he cared for his son. After Ethan went to bed, Clara began washing the dishes. You don't have to do that, Daniel said. I want to. They stood in the quiet kitchen for a moment. Finally, Clara spoke. Your letters mentioned your wife passed away. Daniel nodded slowly. 3 years ago. Fever. Clara lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. Daniel leaned against the counter. I didn't write for a wife because I wanted to replace her. I understand. I wrote because Ethan deserves more than a tired rancher trying to raise him alone. Clara felt something shift in her heart. She realized this man wasn't looking for perfection. He was simply trying to build a family again. The next morning, Clara woke early and began cooking breakfast. When Daniel walked into the kitchen, he stopped in surprise. You didn't have to do that. Clara smiled. I like cooking. Ethan rushed in moments later. Is that real food? Clara laughed. Pancakes. Ethan looked at Daniel dramatically. See? Best decision ever. Days turned into weeks. Clara learned the rhythm of ranch life. Feeding chickens. Mending clothes. Helping Ethan with reading lessons. Little by little, the house that once felt empty began to feel alive again. Daniel noticed the changes too. The laughter. The warm meals. The way Ethan ran into the house after school shouting Clara's name. One evening, Daniel sat on the porch watching the sunset when Clara joined him. I've been meaning to ask something, she said. What's that? Why did you really agree to a mail-order bride? Daniel thought for a long moment. Because I was afraid Ethan would grow up without knowing what a family feels like. Clara looked toward the house, where Ethan's laughter echoed. I think he already knows. Daniel smiled quietly. A few weeks later, the town held a small harvest festival. Music played. Lanterns glowed. People danced under the open sky. Clara stood nervously near the edge of the crowd. Daniel walked toward her. Care to dance? I'm not very good. Neither am I. They stepped onto the wooden dance floor together. It was awkward at first, then easier, then natural. Ethan watched them proudly from a nearby bench. See, he told Mrs. Thompson. I told you she was the one. Months passed. Winter snow covered the ranch in white silence. One night, Ethan fell asleep on the couch between them while they were reading. Daniel looked at Clara. You know, you could still go back if you wanted. Clara smiled gently. I stopped thinking about leaving a long time ago. Daniel's voice softened. I'm glad. Clara looked at Ethan sleeping peacefully. Your son chose me. Daniel nodded. And I'm starting to think he was right. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, share it with friends who love emotional Western stories, leave a comment telling us your favorite moment, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next powerful story. Because sometimes the family we search for is the one that chooses us first.